Raf, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, students, lecturers, and speakers. I'm Rafa, the host of today's event. Welcome to Lecture Series 2022. Thank you to each and every one of you being here with us today. We are pleased to be able to welcome you two students of Bachelor Arts with Honors in Interior Architecture program with us, as well as the guest speaker for today's lecture series. In today's gathering, it is a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, Ms. Nadrah Yusuf, who is going to talk to us about the role of placemaking and reinventing public spaces. Georgetown, Penang has been known to create a mixture of modern and cultural public space. It is important to acknowledge the design of short fronts of public buildings at the human scale level, so there is a relationship with the transition zone with pedestrian walkways. Ms. Nadrah will touch on the design of the building's fronts, shall encourage the public to linger and be attracted to the curiosity of the building's activity inside. Subsequently, this relates to a sustainable environment, economy, and social inclusivity that can strengthen the connection between people and the places they share. In the meantime, I have a very special guest I'd like to introduce to all. Ms. Nadrah Yusuf is an experienced sustainability expert with clear understanding of sustainable solutions in the field of city planning and training in sustainable urban designs. She is known for her sustainability projects, which focuses on low carbon development and transit-oriented development, including low carbon action plan for Penang South Islands, Malaysian Vision Valley Parcel A, National Low Carbon Cities Master Plans, and MBSA TOD Urban Design Guidelines for Shah Alam Phase 1 and 2. Her passionate dedication to promoting sustainable living environment is indeed inspiring. She has prepared a short presentation containing some very helpful tips that each and every one of us can benefit from. With great honor and pleasure, I would like to welcome our guest speaker of today's event, Ms. Nadrah Yusuf. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph, for introducing me. I'm very flattered for being invited to this lecture series of the First University. So let me share my presentation for today. Okay, hi everyone, good afternoon. So today I will be sharing some of my experience and just my understanding and fundamentals towards the role of placemaking in reimagining and reinventing public spaces. So my name is Nadrah Yusuf, and I am a sustainability executive, the master planning department at APDG. So most of my job scope is on township planning, and where I look at sustainability initiatives to be implemented township-wide. So some of the initiatives are related to placemaking, and this is where we try to make sure that our places, especially the public spaces within the township, is activated economically, socially, and environmentally. So from my understanding from your project this semester, you guys are looking at this coastal roadway, which is on Pengkalan Weld in Georgetown, Penang. I'm not specifically sure on the locality or specific location that you guys are looking at, but from my understanding that this is a East Coast road, and it has a very interesting character in terms of its built environment, where there's a mixture of colonial settlement or colonial buildings as well as traditional. So when we talk about traditional, it means that there are cultural values embedded instead of the colonial settlement. So this is an interesting area where it was a reclaimed land, meaning it was a land that was being added to the island during the 19th century as a port of Penang. And what's interesting by the coast is that there are stilt houses on the sea, and these are known for the homes for the Chinese clan jetties, the Chinese laborers at the harbor. And because of all this mixture of such a character, it was called to UNESCO as the UNESCO World Heritage Site. So this is the nature of my job, where we always look at what sort of activities there are along this road. So this is from Think City's website, where they have identified a lot of land uses and activities within Georgetown. So this is where I zoomed in into our project road, which is Pangkalan Weld. So there are, from where I look here, most of the activities are commercial, which are commercially driven. Sorry, these numbers are actually for Georgetown, but as you can see from the colors, the light blue colors are quite predominant in this area, which are commercial. And then there are some mixed uses where these are activities such as office mix, enterprise mix, residential, and there's also some place of worship and a residential area, which is comprising mostly along the jetties area. So from this understanding, you kind of have to know that these are the sort of activities that will be around this road or along this road. And with that, you can certainly understand what are the dynamics of the site, who are the people that will be mostly walking or just engage with the site or the road or the environment. So just some of my observation through the Google Street. So when I look at this coastal roadway, it's quite, it's a 2-lane road, and it's quite wide. And from what I see, the cars are usually fast, and we can say that it's actually car dominated area where the pedestrian walkway is not very treated well. There are pedestrian walkways, but it's just not as conducive or safe or even shaded by trees that it makes it comfortable for people to walk. And as you can see in the picture here, the person is actually walking on the road where there are no sidewalks. And this is actually quite attractive place to go to, where they go to eat chujet. And in terms of landscape at the median road, I mean, for aesthetics, it's okay, but maybe just to make it more of a coastal environment, a landscape in terms of palm trees or anything that can shade the road so people can walk comfortably. So this is the sort of environment that we get from this road. And this is what's interesting at the public building of Suruhanjaya, Pelabuhan, Pulau Pinang. There's a street art where they have actually put this all over the town. So it's interesting, but it's just it's just an attraction. It's not really something that you can engage with. I mean, you can read it, but it's not really engageable. So that is some of the character observation that I've seen through this road. But I'm sure that all of you have done a lot of research and a lot of, maybe you went to the site and you kind of soak in the experience. So maybe it's more than what I have just mentioned to you just now. So for my presentation, I will be talking about these 3 things, which is placemaking, cultural mapping, and the impact of ground floors. So for placemaking, when we talk about placemaking, we need to ensure these 6 principles, which is ease of movement, so that people can easily access the placemaking area, whether it be a shop or a kiosk or art statue. It should be accessible and safe. And then there's the character. So you need to actually understand the site in order to kind of implement what sort of character that can be a part of this particular placemaking element. And then there's legibility. So it needs to be clear why the purpose of being there, and it's just so that people are known to have this placemaking here. And then diversity is quite important so that you can capture a lot of diverse kind of people that goes there. I mean, cultural as well as inclusive. And then there's also adaptability. So as you can see here in the picture, it's actually a parking lot, but then they added a decking where they kind of extend it for the alfresco dining in front of the cafe. So this is adapting to the roads and the street walk. So this is one of the initiatives done, which I will later on present. And then there's the public realm. So placemaking needs to be for the public. It needs to be accessible. It needs to make sure that the space to have public linger at that area is sufficient. But all of it needs to be supported by all kinds of stakeholders, whether it be if it's the road that is being owned, which is the municipality, the city council, then we need to engage with the Georgetown Municipal Council. And then we need to also engage with the designer, make sure that these are the principles that needed to be adapted in the placemaking. And then there's engage with the private sectors, maybe the shop owner, making them, are they okay to maintain the place? So these are the sort of things that goes beyond and how to make sure that this particular placemaking operates well. Because you don't want it to be just there and then suddenly it just dies out. We need to make it sustainable, long-term, put in a lot of activities in it. So yeah. So in terms of the local context, when we talk about placemaking in Georgetown, most of the organizers that involve are Georgetown Municipal Council, and they are the city planners and developers. And they urge to create meaningful public spaces in their projects as part of placemaking efforts to drive community and business growth. So it's not just about the community, it's also about the business growth. So whatever shops or developments around that parklets or art statue or anything, or alfresco dining, it needs to also support the business growth. And then we have the Think City. Think City is actually an organization that they rejuvenate and revitalize existing buildings or existing spaces. And what they do is they do placemaking, they do resilience, analytics, and conservation. So some of their works are on space activation, public realm improvement, and place management. And from my experience, how I started to go into placemaking is when I was involved in the World Urban Forum 9, and it was in Kuala Lumpur, where we kind of tested some spots in KL and to see the social behavior, that whether people are accepting this kind of placemaking elements or not. So the picture above here is actually where we transformed Medan Plaza, which was just a fountain plaza, into oasis. And then there's swings and a lot of different kinds of activities like micro housing, just introducing the future housing for the people. And we got a lot of crowd coming in and just understanding how this place can be transitioned into this way. But it was only for the World Urban Forum, just to get people to see the transformation and the benefit of it. And then this is a parklet, which is in front of a shop, which was turned into a public realm. It was a parking lot. So the purpose is to reduce people driving cars. So what do you do with the parking lots? So we replace them with parklets. And then there's this installation where we had a lot of people coming in and just to observe. So these are just some of the placemaking approaches that we had before, and it was just a test bed at first. But from my understanding, Georgetown has been able to implement a lot of placemaking around the area, a lot of back lanes. They rejuvenate the shop front buildings, and then they did a lot of they redone a part, which is the Armenian part, which was nicely done by King City. And yeah, so it needs to have this cohesive um, engagement between stakeholders, and it's not just from private, it has to be from public, private, and community involvement in order to make it successful. So some of the example that I have here is from the Western countries where, as I mentioned before, this is like a normal parking lot, but because of the, maybe because it was dead before and they just needed to activate the street. So they took a parking lot and turned it into a space for seating area. There's a mixture of materials there, which make it more attractive for people. And as you can see on the right here is exactly the same, and how it can actually, from here, when we talk about business growth, it's actually not, it's probably renovating or not making the space vibrant, but when the shops are in, they needed to, probably the shop owners agreed with the council to take away one parking lot as a public, yeah, explore the possibility, and actually it will boom the business because it has more attraction. So that's what we want actually through the space. So this is just one of the things, like an empty walkway, and if you add a parklet and just a fresco, it just makes the street more welcoming. You know, you would want to walk. So the first thing we want is to encourage people to walk and walk in a shaded and vibrant place. However, of course, there are some challenges in making placemaking. We can't be thinking that it is 100% gonna work, but it needs to have at least ownership, meaning people who are near to the placemaking needs to know or understand that they are also the ones who should be maintaining it. And then there's the maintenance, and there's the public-private partnership. So there's this, Think City has actually redone this back lane into being more attractive by painting a mural and on the floor. But then there's the initiative by the shop hawker. So they opened up tables, and it just makes it more inviting for people to go. And there's also the social issues. So just to understand context, like are there homelessness in the area? And sometimes these can cause vandalism to the placemaking. So just a quote here, to provide an authentic experience for users of the space, you have to work on a bottom-up process and facilitate it. The top-down approach, which is commonly used by municipalities and real estate developers, often disconnects local communities and businesses from the space. So the real idea should come from the local community and the business from the space, and then it goes up to the private and the public, how to make sure that this placemaking can work. So what worked actually, right? So just a case study in Jalan Alo in KL. So I would call this a placemaking, which is, as you saw just now, this is the Western way, right? It's very clean, it's very organized, but we should also appreciate our culture where we like the mama style, the just open table on the street, right? I mean, that's our lifestyle and culture, and this is something that's interesting to look at, and how I segregate the spaces where this is the restaurant entrance and this is the pedestrian walkway, which was turned into a table dining space. And then there's the infra line, which is the lightings cable. And then this is the roadway, which was transformed also. So this is from our culture, right? This is another sort of placemaking, and it works, and it's vibrant, and it's people just enjoy being in these spaces. So again, just looking at the public and private land, the street right of way is usually under municipal council, road reserves. And then we have this area beyond the setback, which is the private owner's building. And what I mean to say here is that the first and second floor should be an activity generating users, meaning that it should be more open to the public. And the third, fourth, fifth could also be supporting activities. So that what's make the building more vibrant. But also within the setback zone here, you can see in the table, what makes it more attractive is that we can have a sidewalk cafe, a merchandise display, street vending, food kiosk, busking, street amenities and fixtures, and then the ground floor, which is in orange. These are the sort of activities that can actually have a business growth to the building. So, and this is just another form of saying that these orange demarcation is where publics are mostly lingering, and it is what we call activity generating users to create placemaking. So another example, which is in Shah Alam, they actually create public area, but this is just their easy approach, or not expensive but cheap approach. So sometimes they just want to introduce to the public that they want to make this as a public space. So they just want to put cheaper elements first. So they put this things like a plant tree in a tong, and then there's a bicycle lane, and there's also just some bollards, or just to make how people can be safe walking around this area. So this is another transformation that was done by the Shah Alam City Council. And also we have to consider the pandemic or endemic times with COVID, right? So with placemaking, you can't really have spaces that can trigger the virus. So some examples here is in Jalan Alo, they kind of spaced the tables out, and they had divisions between shops. So the activity still needs to happen because it's just our lifestyle and culture. However, we need to take safety precautions. And yeah, so it's just there's a way in terms of controlling the crowd is that you can have these demarcations in lines or in circles just to show how people still needs to social distance in this area. So some of my projects, we have actually in our urban design guidelines, we have to implement what are the sort of things that the design implementation that can deter COVID. So some of our benches need to be designed with separation of a plant in the middle or something like that. So I think we as a society needs to consider design with COVID in mind. So as for example, something like this, which people still want to socialize, but being distanced. And this is an interesting quote. Placemaking could start from shared spaces in an office building to a back lane, using art and culture to attract people to have a sense of belonging or a place to relate to. Oh, and this is interesting case study that I just did a research on in Georgetown itself, Jalan Magazine and Jalan Guadwara. The municipal city council of Georgetown has actually revitalized a 135-meter long back lane. And this is between Jalan Magazine and Jalan Guadwara. So as you can see in the picture here, is being rejuvenated into a much cleaner and more organized back lane. And it's quite long, 135. And they still maintain the lively communityhood and without losing its existing character. And yeah, so as you can see here, they sort of like when they revitalize the back lane, they have different spots of placemaking. There are with green turf on the floor, and then there's the timber decking with some plants, and there's also some lights on the ceiling. And it also works as a cycling lane. So we want to make sure that these areas are functional and also provide a safe environment to the public. And this is one of the shops, entering the back lane. So this shop, there's a stall over here that kind of grab the attention of people who goes through the back lane. So this is another placemaking element, and this can definitely make the place more vibrant and people would want to go there. And this is an example of the back lane where even shops are taking advantage of the beautification by putting in tables and outdoor tables just to have a more appealing and inclusive space. So this is what's interesting in Penang Island, that they have rejuvenate some of the back lanes, and the municipal city of Georgetown has actually done a lot of rejuvenation to the back lanes of Armenian Street, Aceh Street. There's Lebo Keng Kui, Jalan Dr. Lim. Yeah, I mean, good job to the municipal council for recognizing these places for public space. And this is an example of a nice shop front, which is a human scale and easy for people to engage with. So when we look at placemaking, of course, we have to consider the community and the context of culture. So what is cultural mapping and why is it necessary? So when we deal with brownfield or existing site, it's important to identify the existing communities surrounding the project. So as I mentioned just now, there are the jetty communities, there are the tourist communities coming from the hotels along the road. And these existing communities will contribute to the social and economic activity that can make the project more successful. And so we need to be able to recognize these different cultures and race and religions in order to make our project more livable and inclusive. So these are some of the pictures that I feel can be a part of the culture of Georgetown, where there is the multi-diverse race as well as the built environment that is attractive for the modern society as well as the colonial era. And thirdly, the last theme that I would like to talk about is the impact of ground floors. So what is a public space, right? When we talk about public space, is it the plaza in between the buildings, or is it the whole thing with the frontage of the building of the facing the plaza? But I think the public space should be the city at eye level, which is human scale, just where people can access and people can see and engage and smell or taste. So these are the important factors that we need to look at. So when we look at the effective viewing distances, as you can see here, when we looked at the 1 meter distance from the shop, this is where we want to, the person can feel more attracted to, which is at the first floor, at the ground floor. And then if the person is beyond 1 meter, which is 5 and 14 and 23, then they are able to experience different level of building heights. But I think in this course, I'm not sure if I'm right, but this is where we want to look at, which is 1 meter. Trying to solve this sort of facade. How can it be more attractive and purposeful to the public to enter? And as you can see here from the shop fronts, I would like to explain to you, this is just the physical interaction between inside and outside. And this is the physical permeability, where even the inside there are dining tables, or there are things that people want to sell. So it's like a both transition from in and out. And then it goes less, which is more towards the treatment of the windows. Are the windows giving full advantage to what people or the public can see inside? And even if it's just a straight like this, is it transparent? Like, is it a full height window? Is it not? Because the window actually is an element that is very important. people are attracted to what they want to see and what's inside. And from this architect Jan Gell, it says that above 50% of the building front of the ground floor should be transparent, meaning windows or just open. So that's something that we should consider. So this is Kampung Glam in Singapore, how they did their back lane more towards the public. They've actually, even the windows are very aesthetically designed. And then there are a lot of tables and chairs along this area. And then of course, even the walls are being painted and making it more vibrant, even the wayfinding or the signages. So these are still what we call something that can be impactful at the ground floor level. As opposed to Jalan Alor, where we see here is just a mural, but it doesn't really give an attraction in terms of economic vibe. There's no punch through to the cafes or punch through to a shop. It's just a mural, and I feel like it can be improved in this sense. Maybe they could do a punch through to a shop, have some kind of economic activity within this area, because mural to me is just, it's not just about mural. When we want to talk about public space, it needs to be activated with activities. And even the ground floor of Surya KLCC. And as you can see, as I mentioned just now, transparency of the window is very important. People are more excited to walk along the road. Even the ledge of the window can be functional for people to sit. And having just activities like this is also diverse in age. An interesting kind of architecture of the windows that can be opened up, and it's just human scale, and this is what people are more attracted to. So the ground floor may only be 10% of the building, but it determines 90% of the street experience. And this is the sort of thing when we talk about placemaking or activating space, we need to understand the software, hardware, and hardware. So software is the experience, the wayfinding, the markets as places. The hardware is the street, the sound, the hybrid space, and then the orgware is when we plan for it, long-term, street coalition, quick wins. So the orgware is very important, where we get stakeholders involved to make sure that it maintains throughout. So as you can see here, what do you feel when you see this kind of blank wall? And when you walk through it, it's not very attractive, and it is just people don't even want to walk through it. And this is an example in KL where we don't appreciate ground floor as much, where we need to make it more activated. So yeah, pedestrian behavior, when they are faced with like more activities on the ground floor, people will turn head more. That's what you want. You want people to look. And then they even stop more, which is 25% will stop more if the ground floor is segments of 2 times 10, which is big. And then there's also the activities per hour in front of ground floors in Main Street. So with more activities, people are more attracted to it. As opposed to just one activity or two. So visual contact is very important in this case. So again, the building is nice, but the activities on ground floor is not very, as opposed to this gives a good environment for people to enjoy the space. And this is another form of placemaking where the owner just puts in tables on the plaza. So when we talk about the street, we want to have the pleasure to walk and cycle in. We want to have that balance of car pedestrians, not car dominated, but also dominated by pedestrians. And then we need to have clear building entrances and clear signages. And even the definition of height and the street is quite important so that we get that right scale. And the physical comfort, wind, sun, sound, sitting green. So in our Malaysian context in Georgetown, we need to have a lot of shade. Trees are very important to at least have more mature trees like in Singapore, where people are more comfortable to walk. And then there's places and activities and coalitions, so street and place management. So this is what we call the service zone, where it's the street lights, the bench, the cables, and then this is the free zone where people are walking through, and the transition zone where the shops are able to create their own identity or have people, whether this is where people stop and look, stop and enter, or stop and walk. So another example is that when we look at this, we want to have something that is more vibrant along the road as opposed to on the left. And just balance cars and pedestrian, meaning like the pedestrian walkway should also be supported by landscape, by the building having protrusions where people can see, and bicycle lane as opposed to just having cars. And the dynamics of the building height also plays an important role to make people interested to be in that environment. And tree canopies are very important to create that comfortable temperature. And as for building itself, the function mix, many small scale units, better than having big scale unit. A good hybrid zone, veranda feeling, visual quality, richness in details, vertical orientation of at least the plinth level, and flexibility. So when we look at this building and as compared to this one, when we have these protrusions out, it's more people would want to probably interact, or just it feels safer to walk when you have people watching as well, as opposed to when you walk in a blank wall with nobody looking out. And then one entrance versus many units. So this building has only one entrance, but this building has many entrances, and it just gives more activities and more reason to walk. As I mentioned here, this is a blank, and it's a very hostile environment. And this is a very, even though this is residential, but it gives off a very interesting environment. And just so this is what standardization and architectural richness. When we work with the facade of the building, we wanted to have more interaction with the space. We have more maybe different kinds of materials or different kinds of shape and just different activities. So it just gives more richness. And the hybrid zone, where we talk about in front of the house, where they take ownership of what they want to have, which is a plant or something that can add identity to their own space. And that's something that is more interesting to walk through as well. So when we talk about space planning as well, like on the left, there's, for example, there's 2 units only. And this is just a supermarket and a shop, as opposed to this where we kind of break it into smaller units, and it gives more vibrant use or diverse activities there. And this is the sort of ground floor experience that we want to have, where people can be engaged and see through the ground floor activities. And the flexible height should also be 4 meters, and it just gives that human scale environment. I guess that's about it. Yeah, thank you so much. I hope if you guys have any questions, please feel free to question now. Thank you.
All right, I guess, Raf, you want to read the questions from the chat box?
Yeah. Wait, So there is a question in the chat box which says that what will happen to the placemaking project if people are not using them?
Okay. I mean, before even making a placemaking project, we need to engage with the community there before thinking that people won't even use this space. The purpose of placemaking is to activate the existing area. And by activating it, we need to engage with the community, with the shop owner, if it's situated in front, just to have their opinion over it and have some kind of agreement, whether they can maintain it or whether they can serve the people there with food or anything like that. And before you have a placemaking built, we need to ensure that long-term or short-term activity. So from my experience, we did have that. We didn't engage with the owners and we just put a parklet in front of that building and it was dead because we didn't engage with the people. We didn't tell them, hey, you know, this is a space for you. You can sit, you can actually grow, even extend your business here. So that's where we did in KL. And the parklet ended up being a rundown and unmaintained. And yeah, so that's something that we learned from our lesson. So if you want to build a successful placemaking, make sure you engage with the surrounding communities and understand what that sort of placemaking can benefit them as well.
There is another question which says that what is the priorities when comes to placemaking, either the flexibility, sustainability, or economy?
Good question. I think the priority should, like I mentioned just now, should be the engagement. It has to come with the engagement of the public and private. And yeah, the flexibility, sustainability, economic will come through. Economic will help if you place the placemaking near commercial activities. Because if you don't place these near commercial activities, it will probably just become like a park or a pocket park or something that people just enjoy. So that's why it's very important to observe the environment of the road, look at how people, where do people linger the most? Maybe that is the best place to put that particular placemaking. So flexibility is definitely something that needs to be done as well, so that it is flexible for anyone, it's flexible in terms of maybe we want to test the placemaking in different locations, so it can be removable, it can be dismantled and then being put back. So that is a sustainable design where it can be reused and be placed at different locations and see where it's most successful. So yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, I think it's interesting to look at the sharing that you shared with us today, because I think like this semester has become our second year looking into this kind of project, because as much as important the street and also like the public spaces, you know, along that side, we're trying to kind of like your concern, that the concerns that you have, which is like the facades of the buildings on the ground floor and also the interior side of the building, which is, I think, it is also part of the crucial consideration in terms of the design. Is because of when we experience walking around the you know, Georgetowns, and some of the buildings are open to public and you can access from one lane to another back lane. which is like the experience of the interior space bring a different kind of like transitions from one street to another street. So I mean, that will be something that kind of like relevance or something that can be possible to be built in the context of heritage site, which is they have a bit kind of like control in terms of developments of the design, you know, and when we look into more urban context, like what we have in KL, there are a lot of restrictions, constraints in terms of design possibilities and all that, which is kind of like really hard for us to look into this kind of stuff, you know. So I think now people are talking, yeah, I mean, people been talking about like urban settings, you know, like placemaking outdoor, but seldom they're talking about it, the role of that interior building itself. Looking into the placemaking, because as you say, it's a testing, you know, like a kind of like we need to test it. It's either it works or it's not working, you know, those kind of things. So I think by having the understanding of the development shouldn't start at the entrance of the buildings, but you know, considering like what happened outside the context of the built out area, which is it's pretty much helping the designers or the architect to think of, especially when it comes to the abandoned buildings, like, you know, there is a reason why the buildings was abandoned at the first place, you know, and then how we as interior architects or, you know, like interior designers to look into to solve these kind of issues. It's maybe like there's no one to fund the cost of the building and etc. So I think that where the roles that, the situations that we look into in these projects. And so the input that you give to us is pretty much like helping the student to understand the whole ideas of these projects, and also like why are the importance of this, you know, to be considered when it comes to the proposals and etc. Yeah. So any questions from the floor? Where does the source of budget placemaking come from? Okay.
Okay, so in terms of budget, like usually the community, if they wanted to have something like this, they will present it to the municipal council. And from what I experienced with Think City, they actually engage with the municipal council and give them the quotations or what are the rough estimations, improve or reduce the budget. So usually it's the council that will help to elevate this project. Even, it can also come from the developer itself. So like the shop owners or Saimdabi or Gamuda, those kind of developers are also looking at placemaking. They activated their parks with some projects there. So it depends on the locality. Just adding back to what Encik Hafizuddin was mentioning, I totally agree. Maybe there is from my job scope, I don't really look at the interior space, but we do have this principle where it needs to be penetrable. Like the buildings need to be have a hybrid zone for public to access. Like I know places like in Hong Kong, they have a lot of public but ground floor, just people walking through, and it's just a seamless environment for people to walk through, right? But of course, like if it's a coffee shop, you can't be having public to just simply walk in and then go out. So it needs to also, a building itself needs to also embed some of the values of having a puncher or a true block connector in between, or yeah, just to connect spaces to one another, because we sort of lack in that in our context. Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to train ourselves not to reinventing the wheels, but to, you know, like to look into what we can do with the existing things that we have, you know, just to improve the livelihood of that context. I think, yeah, I think like Bangkok, like Singapore, they even use the, you know, the space like in the shopping mall for the public use, to have the extensions of the public activities toward the interior space, because the limitations that they have along the streets and all that. Because if we are like well planned as what the URA has done in Singapore, then I think we shouldn't face these kind of issues in KL. I mean, you know, specifically and stuff. So now we're looking into how what are the potential thing that you know, we can ventures into in terms of the designs of the interior space and in regards to these kind of matters. I think, well, let's see what the future can offer to us and look into, and maybe like, you know, if we have more engagement with the designers and like, for instance, like yourself, you know, to have more exposures for us to involve more in this kind of project, so that the students can get more kind of like ideas and you know, what are their role in this kind of like project or situations.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we even like our office, even sometimes we get students come in just to visit. We had they just look at where we work and what projects we are working, and we kind of explain to them. But this is township urban design level, but it's a good experience. We even had Harvard University students coming in just to look at what we did. So definitely we are okay with having we are okay to engage more with students, and it's kind of something that we give back to the society and ensure that good designs are being implemented. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, any more questions from the floor?
There is last question, which is how much does it cost for a placemaking project?
Okay, a placemaking project, I mean, there are different kinds of placemaking projects, so the cost can be varied. Like sometimes it can be a parklet, sometimes it can be a art sculpture. So I think maybe you need to understand the scale of that placemaking project, and it all depends on the materials, on the construction. Yeah, I'm not sure how much, but you can definitely probably look at the scale of what sort of project that you want to have first.
Okay, I would like to thank Ms. Nadrah Wan Yusof again for your time and sharing your insight. I believe that the students have gained a better understanding regarding the topic of placemaking and reinventing public spaces. So I think now we can take a group photo, and I hope that everyone can switch on their camera for a while before we end. Okay, now let's take the photo. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, the second slide. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Nadrah, for your sharing today. Hope to engage more with you in the future. Right, until then,
Yeah,
take care.
sure. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miss.